The following is a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio. Keep your mission on your mind and your mind on your mission. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman.
You laughing over there, my man? Michael Coleman, get a little chuckle here before we start our Mission Minded here. Keep your mind, your mission on your mind. It's the podcast we do every single. It's funny because we've been doing this thing now for a couple of years, and we were all really articulate. And then that's the fun thing about doing podcast and talking amongst friends is we can be real, and we've had some real discussions, and we always have some fun discussions. We talk a lot of business on this particular one. We got an email I want to get into, and then I want to ask you a question about retirement coming up. But first of all, how are you doing? What's going down at the Heart of Alabama Food Bank? Everything good down there?
Yeah, we had a big fundraiser, fun and food drive for the summer with the TV station we do every year here.
Oh, good.
We had a lot of success. So right now in the nonprofit world, it's a little bit challenging with inflation and kind of pinching some of those extra dollars. And we certainly understand that. We don't want to burden anybody down who doesn't have the disposable income, to help out. We understand that. But those who do have been very generous. We're very thankful for it. So it's a lot of work to do it, but we're very thankful for our local TV station to be involved. And so
one of those deals where they were asking listeners to drop by canned goods or something like that, non-perishable is on them.
Yeah, so we start 5 a.m. to like 7 p.m. and the TV station's there with us all day. We have a couple other sponsors, but yeah, it's out in front of Renfro's grocery store. It's a family-owned grocery store here in the area.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and we park a truck out there, and people can donate food, or they can drop off money, and we do that all day long, and or they can go online and donate. So anyway, it was a great success. It always gives us a chance to thank people, in person for the donation. It's a great opportunity to talk about food insecurity and the challenges of people who don't have enough, and there's a lot of, as we've been talking about in other places, a lot of challenges getting people to understand that, and especially if they've never walked in those shoes. So all of that's part of helping get the word out.
I've done a million food drives through my years of doing radio, and we used to do stuff for Birmingham, and we could certainly do things for you down there in Montgomery as well. It's funny because normally whenever you have a food drive, people are pulling up and just being honest here, you want to get the biggest bang for your buck.
Right.
You want to be that person dropping off 5 or 6 bagfuls of canned goods. And so you normally go through, let's just be honest here, you're going through this thing, you're trying to find the deals, trying to find the buy one, get ones.
Yeah, sure.
Green beans are 2 cans for $1, and you can fill up a couple for $50. You can make it look like you're going to feed the world, right?
Yeah, sure.
But buying Bush's beans, 60 bagfuls of those things ain't really what you need. I'm assuming since it's non-perishable goods, you can think to yourself, well, you know what? They may not need these damn lima beans, but at least they're good for 4 years. I'm going to get them 25 bagfuls of lima beans.
Yeah.
So what would
and I tell you, we're thankful because what happens is we get donations from grocery stores regularly, distribution centers like Walmart Distribution Center in our area, and Publix, and some of the others. And then what we get from the USDA, and then we look at our programming and we look at what's missing out of that, and then we kind of use the money that we have budgeted when we order food, we kind of order to fill the gaps in.
Okay. What would you ask people though, if you're really just straightforward? Hey, thank you for everything you bring. Any canned good is a good canned good. Don't get me wrong, but if you really want to help us, this is what we need and this is what we'd like. What would it be?
Well, because we can make a dollar stretch more, it's easier for us if people just make a financial donation. And then, because when you walk into a Publix or a grocery store right now, they are saying that to get the equivalent of a meal costs you about $3.50. Well, we can get through our donation system and through what we have to purchase through our channels, we can spend $1 and get 5 meals. Okay. So we can just stretch things out much, much further. However, we also understand there's something about people touching peanut butter and then saying, here, I bought this, you give it, I'm giving it to you. It's something tangible. And they're, that they really feel good about actually getting it. And so we don't want to discount that at all. So we're really thankful for anything, that people come along and usually shelf stable things, your standard vegetables. And it's really funny because some people, I talked to some food banks and they're really starved for produce. And then other people are really starved for proteins, meats, they don't have enough meat. Well, and every food bank is different because of the stores that are located, what they get, what we get from our distribution center. So our biggest challenge is the shelf stable cans. When we order lots of times we're ordering truckloads of peas or truckloads of corn or truckloads, because we're getting plenty of produce from our channels and we're getting plenty of meat, which is a great problem to have.
Yeah.
But we don't have enough canned goods out there. And in part because industry is getting better. They used to buy everything they could. And if you had leftover truckloads or whatever, you could donate or you could get rid of it at cheaper. Well, now with technology helping with inventories, manage inventories and all that, they don't have the excess that they used to. So, you've always got some challenges there, but that's what makes it interesting is, our challenge is not always the same. Just a couple of years ago, it was more of we had some produce challenges, but that was overcome with the USDA program. So everybody's different. Their needs are different. And we have a great network across Feeding America where we try to share. If I have excess produce, I'll share somebody who has excess cans, and we do trade-offs and that kind of stuff. So,
all right. Info at TonyCurryRadio.net, info at TonyCurryRadio.net. He is Michael Coleman. He's the CEO of the Heart of Alabama Food Bank, HAFB, hashtag that. And also, of course, you can check us out here on TKR. We run the show at least 5 days a week, wherever you get your favorite podcast. We have another show called Bite by Bite, which we do right after this. It airs right after this on TKR, but you can also find that wherever you get your favorite podcast. Jody had an interesting email question here from Mountain Brook, and this kind of goes along with what we were talking about. She said, can you tell what the economy is for a particular country based on what people are giving to food banks? I know when I was always told that when you see a lot of Christmas lights around the holidays, that means the economy's good. People are feeling more giving and they feel better. And when they're feeling better, they want to celebrate more and they'll put Christmas lights up. And when the economy's not really good, they don't put Christmas lights up. So if you see a lot of lights in your neighborhood, things are good. That's what I've always heard. Can you tell based on what is contributed, based on your numbers, can you tell where the country's going right, where it's going wrong? Is inflation here? Is it, or is it, I mean, sometimes when times really good, I would think it would hurt non-for-profits when times are really good because people kind of forget about that. Am I wrong there?
No, but for us, something that Feeding America does for us is very helpful. And just so the audience understands, so Feeding America has a national network, national office, and it contracts with 200 something food banks. And every county in the United States is assigned to one of those food banks. So we have 35 of Alabama's 67 counties assigned to us. And we know the data on those counties. And what happens is every year, Feeding America takes the data and reanalyzes it, updates it on what's public data. And like, for instance, it just came out with a new this year and they added 40,000 to the food insecure rolls. And so when that happens, we're already seeing that on the ground. We're already seeing that there's an increase. We're increasing our distribution, but we're still not, meeting enough. We're not giving enough of what we need to give. So it's, you're looking at every month, we're looking at, are we distributing more? Are we distributing out to our agencies more? What's the feedback that they get? And then we look at individual donations. So I look at it across in the food bank right now, and we're down from where we've been in the past. I look at other food banks and I'm like, okay, is this a Montgomery area problem, or is this a problem in Birmingham, or is it I check with the food banks in Idaho and Texas and just across the board. There are exceptions, but they're just across the board, not just food banking, but nonprofits in general are down. And so you start looking, okay, that's an indication that it's an economy problem. And so you start looking, okay, well, seems like everybody's out eating all the time. You can't get into a restaurant. Let there be a sporting event, a concert. It seems like there's plenty of money out there. But what you'll find is a lot of people, middle class or lower middle class, simply do not have the discretionary funds to be able to do things like to support some nonprofits. Now, some people make that absolute commitment. It's just like how they tithe at church. I'm going to tithe at church no matter what else I've got going on. And some people do that and make that commitment. But a lot of people who might hear a commercial of ours and might give us $50 might say, man, I really would love to help them this year, but I just don't have the extra $50 to spend on that or to support that. So, yeah, we see that. So there's those kind of gauges that we look at. The other, though, it was interesting. She says, do you see that in other countries? And the reality is that America is pretty unique. There's food support in Canada. Feeding America, the Feeding America Network does not go up into Canada, but they have similar type food support like that. But in most countries of the world, there is no safety net like a Feeding America or food banking system. When people are hungry, they beg, or they maybe can get something from their neighbors, but lots of times they just go to bed hungry. Really? And it's heart-wrenching. But the food banking network, and you got to remember, just in our own country, this has only been around for about 50 years. Before that, there was not a nationwide food banking effort. And we have grown exponentially over the last, couple of decades. But other countries don't have the benefits for the poor that we have. They don't provide emergency health care. Those things just don't exist in their structure very often. And so, people say this all the time, is that we have the richest poor in the world. And the truth is, I want to live in a country that cares about its citizens and those that run into barriers and obstacles and can fill in some support gaps for people if they don't have family or friends or a church or something that can help do that. I want to be associated with a country that cares about their neighbors and one another. But what we're doing, we're always looking, going back just to overall big picture, we're looking at every bit of data we can, and it comes from just a host of different places. Some of it's government, sometimes it's like the Chronicle of Philanthropy. They get studies. We get information and data thrown at us all the time, and yet we have to bring it down and say, okay, is that relevant to my 35 counties I'm overseeing? And if so, how should I be reading the data to then respond to it in a way that maxes my overall donations may go down, but I want to make sure that I'm squeezing as much juice as I can from every endeavor that I'm dealing with, so that I don't leave anything on the table just because we can't afford to leave anything on the table.
I know that there's certainly a need here, and that need will never go away. And you and I had this discussion last week. There is enough food on in this country to feed everybody. It's just logistically, how do you get it to people? I mentioned that California is having all kinds of issues with no water, and we're being flooded in New Orleans. It's like, why can't we pipe that water from? I don't understand that logistically. Yeah. We can pipe oil from across the country, but why can't we pump water? It just doesn't make sense. When you and I know that you're a positive guy, and I know you're a faith-driven guy, I know you're a God-fearing guy, but when you hear about the hunger issues in Gaza right now, and it seems like every 3 or 4 years it could be something that could be in Africa, something like that. When you hear how difficult people are having to deal with things, what how does it make you feel to know that it's not only on a scale that you're doing, but a much larger scale? And then just basically tell me about. I mean, when I hear about 6,000 trucks a week, logistically speaking, I'm like, how do you do that? How do you do that?
Yeah. First of all, when you look at some of the pictures coming out of Gaza, and I saw a picture um, of a little girl who had been injured, and you know, she didn't ask to be in that situation. It is just she's crying, she's scared, she's hurt, physically hurting. They're fighting for every bit of food, and my heart just breaks for that situation. Um, I try to step back and say, but my heart breaks for the babies who were burned and decapitated and all that, the atrocities that were inflicted upon Israel. And, I think the great evil in all this is Hamas, and oppresses its own people. And anyway, it's just heartbreaking, and there's just no there's just no way to. I can't stay in that position, because if I did, it would just overwhelm me with sadness and grief. Because the reason I'm in the nonprofit space is because we want to alleviate as much suffering as possible. And it's an ongoing battle, and we have more resources than any other country in the world. And we see us trying to fight some of these difficulties of poverty and food insecurity. So yeah, I just have to continue to focus on the good that's taking place. Understand we're combating an evil. Now, because I'm a spiritual person, I do believe behind all of that, there's a great evil that inflicts pain and human suffering, and creates chaos and hatred towards one another. And I think that's the antithesis of what God intended, and what God will ultimately create someday.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, there's just going to be physical suffering, emotional suffering, and all we can do is do everything in our power to alleviate it. I watch the news to stay updated, but I can't continue to see the images, because the sorrow is too great for me.
Yeah. I'm with you. And I mean, you've dealt with that. I mean, you worked obviously with the Jimmy Hell mission for a lot of years, and obviously you've given your life to the Lord in a service effort. And we appreciate that. And again, you just do what you can do. And you do what you can do for your side of the street, and you try to make the world a better place today than it was yesterday. I saw an interesting thing. He's Michael Coleman, by the way, the CEO of Heart of Alabama Food Bank. I wanted to get into retirement. We haven't talked. We talk a lot of business on this show.
Yeah.
And I saw an interesting number the other day, and you and I were talking last week about the military, which I thought was really interesting. And I said, at the age of 58, I got a kid that's got a year of college under his belt. The idea of having a pension sounds really good to me right now.
Yeah.
I know you have one. I've got like 3 or 4 friends of mine who are like 58, 59, who are retiring this year, and they still have to work, but they're getting like a $4,000 or $5,000 check every month from their pension for wherever they're steel workers or whatever it is. And I'm like, I was like, man, that sounds pretty good. I got another friend of mine, his kid's going into the Marines, July 15th, he's going to Philadelphia, and I'm thinking to myself, and he's like, I can't believe my son's doing that, but you know what? He's going to be able to go to college for free, and he's going to be able to do this and that and the other. And if he stays there 25 years, he's going to have a nice fat check coming out every single month, and he can go off and do his own thing.
Yeah.
And then I saw the stat: 45% of all Americans have no savings or retirement at all. Zero.
Yeah.
Nothing. Not even emergency funds. And then only 20% of all jobs in this country have some type of pension involved in it. Now, obviously, there's a lot of jobs that have 401ks. I remember when I first started, when the 401k thing came into play, I forget when it was 30, 35 years ago. It's probably been longer than that.
Yeah.
They used to match dollar for dollar. And then by the time I left, they didn't match anything. It was just
Yeah.
the idea that they were giving you a 401k to invest in. That was the match. But yeah, a lot of places. I mean, if you get it, and again, it's free money. So you want to you want to give as much as you possibly can because it's free money. And in my particular case, in my 50s, my life was turned upside down. It's God's plan, and I'm super blessed by it. But I had to reach into my 401k, and I had to just dismantle it to keep my family fed and keep everything going until I could get back on my feet and get things going. And so I'm super blessed to have had that.
Yeah.
Where is that? Those numbers right now? I'm assuming those are the worst numbers we've had in a while, or else they wouldn't have brought it up. Where are we in this country when we know we're starting to live a little older? Medicine's always pushing us forward.
Yeah.
And all you hear about is people, we're always one paycheck away from being homeless. What's your thoughts on that? How do we pull it off?
Well, it's a mouthful right there. Because I remember I even took a picture of it and sent it to myself. I was watching the news and a stat came up, a recent study that upwards of like 58% of people, are one paycheck away, or I think it was described as living paycheck to paycheck.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they don't have any savings, but they're obviously not able to, they don't have a lot of room left at the end of the month. And so you think about, and I lived that for many, many years when I was enlisted in the military, and I did have my time enlisted, have my time as an officer. When I was enlisted and I had a wife, I was very young and we had 2 children, and it literally there was nothing extra. And if it was anything extra, it'd be guaranteed that within the next month, the insurance payment would roll around or something would come around to take that over, the car needed fixing or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
We did that for several years. So yeah, it's very interesting. My wife teaches as a K-4 teacher at a private school. And like you said, they offer it, but it's like they match the first $50 or something,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, we want to participate in it because if it's free money, the rule of thumb is you want to take advantage of that. Now, we think it's very important. This is, again, kind of a culture thing with me is I want to make sure that we're looking out long-term for our employees here. And so we set up a 401k that you can donate into it right away, but you don't get any matching for your first year. But after the first year, we will put 3% in your 401k, whether you put any in or not. We're going to put 3% of your pay, but we will actually match it dollar for dollar up to 5%. So if you'll get 3%, but if you want to, as an incentive to put more in there, we'll match it dollar for dollar, which is pretty good. But people are all over the map. Some people have a 401k, but there's no matching. Sometimes it's aggressive matching. I read from financial, and be honest with you, when I read financial planners that go, oh, well, 401k was never designed to be a retirement. I've read that recently a couple of times, and I'm like,
really?
I'm not sure where that's coming from. I'm sure there's some sort of specific angle they're trying to talk about. But I remember back in the day, you worked for the city, you got a government job, you worked for the state, whatever it was, you did that. So you would work your 20 years and you'd have a pension the rest of your life. And they started realizing, hey, people are living longer. We're paying this out. Hey, the city or the government or whatever it is can't pay these out. So as an alternative, they did the 401ks, and the government put the rules in place that says you can't access them till, you're 59 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
You have to start pulling them out by age 70 if you haven't, a certain percentage. And I'm sitting there going, well, to me, that's exactly what it is. It's a replacement, but basically it puts more of the onus back onto the employee, and not the employer, bearing all that weight. So, um, people are all over the place with that, but I think most, organizations and most government, uh, places just understand carrying a pension is just too big of a burden, to be able to dole that out for somebody. If they work 20 years, they're done at age 40 and they live another 40 years, having to pay that out. It's just too much.
No, I mean, and I mean, Social Security is not meant to pay for everything either. I mean, that was
Yeah,
supposed to be just
yeah.
a little
Just
extra,
be a
little extra
supplement, yeah.
bone. And golly, it seems like every time I get a year older, I hear that it's probably not even going to be there by the time I turn 70. So who knows?
Yeah.
And again,
But I look at my mom, Tony. My mom, when she retired, so she went through a divorce. And so she thought she was going to be married in her retirement years. And I don't know that her company ever offered any sort of retirement or anything. If it did, she certainly didn't take advantage of it. And so when she retired, she got $1,100 a month Social Security. That was her Social Security. It was certainly not enough to live on, to pay for an apartment and to pay for your medicine and everything. And I actually use this example all the time about seniors struggling to having to choose between food and medicine. Well, my mother had myself and my sister to help take care of her and supplement and make sure that she didn't go hungry, make sure her bills were paid. But there's so many people out there who either don't have that, or their kids are struggling themselves and are trying to pull some of that from their parents, or the kids don't know what their parents' true situation is because they live across the country. There's all sorts of scenarios to where, when people find themselves on Social Security, alone, then it's like they're like, wow, what do I do? And that's why you see lots of times, older people at Walmart being greeters and things like that, because they're like, I just can't do enough. What's really sad are people who have jobs that don't really offer retirement or any sort of matching, and they are living month to month. They don't have any extra to put in to save. They get Social Security. That's not a lot. But they don't have the health to continue working, or they don't have the ability for whatever reason. And you see some real sad stories in that. And people think, oh, that's the exception rather than the rule. But when you look at 256,000 people who just in our 35 counties are food insecure, and how many thousands are seniors, then you recognize they're in that position right there, wondering sometimes where their next meal is coming from. What a terrible place for our seniors to be in. And my heart just hurts, and we're just working as hard as we can to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of praying there. I mean, you assume that by the time you're 65 or 70, your house will be paid for, and that doesn't seem like it's a real dream that could happen now. And obviously, if your house is paid for, you don't have that big nut every single month, and so that Social Security obviously goes a lot farther. And you'll have a place to stay. You don't have to worry about being evicted, but it's just not the way it is. And then, you hope that if you've lived a good life and you should put a little money away, that perhaps your children will be smart enough to perhaps, our generation, we were never taking care of our mom and dad. Our mom and dads were always going to take care of us till they were dead. And they did, for the most part. The idea of moving mom and dad into the house and doing that, that's kind of a relatively new idea over the last 15 to 20 years. And I think it's great, because some parents expect that. I raised you, I brought you up, I took care of everything for you for the first 20, 25 years, and now dad needs, a place to stay.
It comes around in full cycle to where I say the parent becomes the child, and the child becomes the parent. And we end up parenting our parents and have to make decisions. It certainly was that way with my mother, where I would almost have to speak to her sometimes in a very firm voice. No, Mom, we're not going to do that. You're going to do this. Because she couldn't make good decisions and sound decisions, financially or otherwise, for herself. And, when I look at it again, I always try to find the silver lining where I can. The silver lining is I was blessed enough to be in a position, my sister and myself, to be able to help her. So I'm thankful that she didn't have to do without certain things before she passed. But I know that that's not everybody.
Yeah.
So a significant amount of people that we love and care about, we'd love to be able to help them. We'd love to be able to get them through these rough spots, but the families just don't have the ability to do it.
Hey, brother, it's our last show before Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to you. I hope you have a blessed week and a wonderful Sunday, and we'll catch up next week on the next show. And, of course, you like what you hear, make sure you tell people, info@TonyCurryRadio.net, and check out our other show called Bite by Bite, which is specific to Feeding America, and, of course, the Heart of Alabama Food Bank. That show will be coming up here next on our network of TV and radio stations, not to mention, of course, wherever you get your podcast. Michael, thank you, bro.
Enjoy it, brother.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.